There's a disturbance. Oh. Hi, I'm Off the Deep End, and welcome to... And today, get ready to be creeped out, because it's time for some creepypastas. It's time to get some use out of my drama school training, you know? Today, we're going to be narrating some creepypastas, some scary stories, in a thespian manner, with my dulcet tones. A lot of you tell me you like my voice. I have a low, smooth speaking voice, so I understand. But first, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel. I talk about my love of horror movies as well as the wider genre, encompassing true crime, scary stories, and I upload whenever my moon sign is rising, and absolutely no other time. Please consider following me on my other social medias. Peep my Insta and TikTok on the screen now. I'm a little less fucking miserable over there sometimes. Maybe. You'll have to find out. But enough of that, let's get to making this pasta. Get this bread. Get this pasta. But let's jump into the first story. This is from the r/no sleep subreddit and is entitled, My Roommate Keeps Screaming Every Night. It all began when I moved out of state for school. The college of my choice had an incredibly good architectural program that I wanted to get into. There were two slight problems before moving. First was getting a job, which didn't prove too difficult in this college town. The second problem, that seemed a little more challenging, was finding an apartment that I could afford. In this town, even a small room off campus wasn't cheap. By some miracle, I found one listing after seemingly endless hours of checking openings. The ad in question was for a small 2-story house in an adjacent town that was within my price range. Considering how short of time I had before moving in for the semester, and there was nothing else as cheap, I immediately took the room. I moved into the house with a few possessions I took with me. The owner was a young woman about my age, named Michelle. She was a slim-figured woman with a shade of yellow hair that almost looked white. Her eyes were also the bluest of blue I had ever seen in a person. She was a really big help to me whilst I was moving my things into the house and unpacking. The house was a small 2-story Italianate-style home, sitting on a luscious green lawn. Michelle told me the house had belonged to her grandparents and needed some refurbishing. I thought the house looked beautiful. The style and setting, combined with the right amount of aging, gave the house a picturesque look. It could easily have come straight out of a painting. It was so beautiful. The first detail I noticed of Michelle was her sense of fashion. She was dressed in a dark reddish-brown sweater, a brown scarf to blend with the colour of autumn around her and the property. She completed the look with blue skinny jeans and black boots. The other detail I noticed, upon closer inspection, were the slight but recognisable bags under her eyes, which suggested to me that she had been suffering from sleep deprivation. I wouldn't have noticed this given how much energy she gave off. She must have been caffeinated to the gills to help me out that day. I didn't say anything to her about it though. I only had one chance to make a good first impression with my first roommate. We got done moving, and she showed me around the house. My room was on the main floor. It was a bare, green-walled, empty room aside from a bed, with complete headboard, an antique dresser with mirror attached to it, and an opened walk-in closet. My mind was already planning on how to decorate my room. Then she led me upstairs and informed me that her room was on the second floor. Below the stairs, I noticed a large framed picture of an old man with a blank, expressionless look on his face. He both seemed to be staring at the camera taking his picture and also staring at me with some unnatural fashion. I asked Michelle who the old man in the photo was. She stared at the picture, also with a wide-eyed, fearful look on her face. She flatly said it was her grandfather, then quickly turned up the stairs as if to get away from his unending gaze. Now, as far as the rules go, she didn't have a lot of them, at least none that were extreme, but she told me of one. Actually, it wasn't so much a rule as it was a little warning that made me scratch my head in confusion. I don't really remember doing it, she explained, but people have told me that I tend to make noises late at night and I tend to go on for a while. I lowered the rent because I feel it's the least I could do if it bothers you. All I ask is if you hear anything from my room, don't worry about it, I'll be fine. But if it gets to be too much, I'll understand and I'll even reimburse you. It was a strange rule to be sure. Noises? What kind of noises? I then remembered the benefits I had of living here, and I thought to myself, maybe it's not a big deal. maybe she's just a loud moaner during some late night sessions, and she didn't want to put it into words for me. I didn't press the issue. I thought to myself that I'd just let her have her privacy. I was thoroughly exhausted after a long day of moving things into the new apartment, but Michelle was a big help. She purchased takeout that night, what she called her move-in special, which consisted of a pizza, some Chinese food, and an order of taquitos. I'd normally prefer something more nutritionally complete, but I wasn't in the mood to debate. My body was ready to devour every carb in sight. I inhaled a little bit of everything, sometimes mixing them to make up some unholy abomination of takeout. The taste was funky and greasy, but I downed it all and felt like I could finish up with a pint of ice cream. And with the help of my new roommate, I did. Exhaustion finally hit me like a brick wall, and I finally turned in for the night, resolving to decorate my room in the morning. I was awakened in the night by a sudden rumbling in my insides, and I darted to the bathroom. The mixture of Italian, Chinese, and takeout had not been sitting well, and had turned my colon into a war zone. I exited the bathroom and heard a sound that reverberated throughout the otherwise quiet house. It took me a moment to realize it was screaming, a high-pitched, shrill screaming full of danger and fear that came from the second floor. I realized it was coming from Michelle's room. Forgetting what she had told me earlier, I ran upstairs to her room and knocked on the door. Her screaming was all that responded. I tried turning the knob, only to find it was locked. She kept screaming, and I could hear thrashing and thumping, as if she were being thrown around the room. I called 911, and a police cruiser reached my house within minutes of the call. It was one officer who came, and I was struck by how similar he looked to Michelle. Slender body type, bright blonde hair and blue eyes. He went by Officer Tears. He was, in fact, Michelle's older brother. He had been on duty that night, and happened to be in the area when my emergency call went out. I had gone upstairs with him. By that time, the screaming had stopped. He knocked on the door, and Michelle opened the door in seconds. "Hey, sis," he greeted with a smile at her drowsy face. "Your roomie said you were screaming, and I thought I'd check on you." "I'm okay, Ben. Thanks for checking." She ended by closing the door. Ben, or Officer Tears, walked back out after filing a report, and was about to enter his vehicle when I stopped him. "What was that?" I asked him. The instant of her screaming and now being okay, suddenly, was kind of unnerving. "Michelle suffers from night terrors," he said, turning back to me. "She has for a long time now. It's okay, though. They only sound worse than they really are. If it happens again, just call 911, and I'll be over quickly." He drove off in his cruiser. I had walked back inside, feeling weird about that night. I wondered to myself if this was the noise Michelle was talking about. I saw her again the following morning. She looked more upbeat than I was expecting her to be. She was once again dressed in a fashionable sweater and jeans for her day. I asked her about the previous night, and she looked dumbfounded. I reminded her about her screaming, and her cheerful smile had gravitated downward. "I'm sorry," she said in a sad tone. "I don't really remember what happens, but everyone tells me I have night terrors. I guess I've had them since I was a kid. I'm sorry about last night, but it's really nothing to worry about. They don't last long, and I wake up fine. If you want to leave, though, I understand." I felt sorry for her that moment. I told her it's okay as long as she's not hurting herself. Besides, where else could I go? I stayed there for 2 weeks. Every night, she had her screaming episodes. They would always occur between midnight and 3 a.m., going off and on with intervals. Just as I think she finally stopped and could go back to sleep, she starts up again. I could hear her screaming during the night since her bedroom is right above mine. Sometimes I'd hear her walk around the room and thrash against a wall or furniture as if she was sleepwalking. I wouldn't be able to sleep during this whole time because the noise was so gut-wrenching that I could never ignore it. During the mornings, she would look so positive and chipper on her way to her classes, and I feel like I didn't sleep a wink at all. She'd be out with her cheeriness, and I started feeling a resentment for her. I started looking for changes in my schedule to find some relief. I tried looking for night classes and night shifts. I had to look for anything so that I wouldn't be at home during the night and hear Michelle screaming. I found a position as an overnight stocker at a major retail company. I also managed to get classes for the morning. I never saw Michelle much, but I was glad to not hear her night terrors anymore. It was on the rare instance when I did see her, and I would notice something else. I went to the bathroom one night and saw Michelle standing in front of the mirror. This was the first time I had seen her without a sweater and jeans. That time, she wore a pink top and matching shorts. The skin of her exposed upper back showed signs of scarring and bruising. Her arms were also covered in bruises. I think I even saw traces of bite marks on her. The second time I was home, I was checking her room upstairs. The room, which was open at the time, wasn't out of the ordinary. Some posters, a makeup table, and a bed filled the room. Then, the room suddenly felt cold and sinister, as if some unseen figure were inside and dared me to enter. I never walked away from an empty room so fast in all my life. It was my day off from classes and no work that night when I was home, and I would finally understand the story behind Michelle's night terrors. I came home after running some errands and was ready to drop when I noticed a bright silver sedan in the driveway that I didn't recognize. I walked inside to see Michelle, her brother Ben, and two others I didn't recognize, carrying rolls of some sort of insulation material. Michelle introduced the two older people as her parents, and they were over to help soundproof her bedroom. Her parents greeted me instantly with cheerful smiles and somewhat tired looks on their faces. I felt bad that I didn't help them set up the material, but I had no more energy for even the smallest chore, and I wasn't comfortable going back to that room anymore. After my quick nap, I found Michelle still downstairs. Michelle was going for takeout and wanted to know what I wanted. She left and I got to know her parents more. I had asked why they were soundproofing the room, and they told me Michelle had noticed that I had changed my schedule so that I could avoid her sleeping patterns and get some rest. She had felt so guilty because she really thought of me as a friend and wanted to make some accommodations for me. Then they told me about the origin of her nightly episodes. It was one day when Michelle was 4 years old. The family was visiting her grandfather, whose mental health had been declining after the death of his wife. Whenever they talked to him, he would say little, if anything, and have a blank stare on his face. They had noticed, however, that whenever he looked at Michelle, his expression would change in a way that they could only describe as odd. They had spent the night at the house, thinking nothing of his behaviour that evening. Later in the night, the parents had a blood-curdling scream coming from Michelle's room. They darted to the room and found an obscured figure looming over her and wielding a large kitchen knife in his hand. The father had grabbed a lamp in the room and smashed it over the assailant's head. They switched on the overhead lights and found that the intruder was the grandfather, who still held the knife in his hands. The impact of the blow had killed him instantly. Though she was physically uninjured, Michelle's young mind could not process the event that had happened. What resulted was years and years of night terrors in which Michelle would scream her lungs out. It also wasn't unusual for her to throw herself around the room and sustain some kind of injuries. I had felt worse than ever after hearing her tragic origin story. I complained about how her screams were keeping me up at night, but she was the one who had gone through a traumatizing incident. I think I would be more surprised if she weren't having night terrors. I thought about what he may have been planning to do, and the thought made me shudder. Since I was off that night, it was one of the rare nights that I was home and able to fall asleep instantly. The soundproofing must have done the trick, because I don't recall hearing Michelle scream at all. I think I would have preferred that to what came next. I had a vivid nightmare that night that I still recall with clear detail. I was in Michelle's room, and I had been screaming in the silent darkness of my room. I was afraid no one would hear me and come to help, despite how loud I projected my wails. Above me was a dark silhouette of a person, whose face gradually came into detail. It was the face of an older man, wide-eyed, and a large grin splitting his face. He was what I was screaming at. I saw him throw me into the window, and my body broke through the glass pane, and shards surrounded me as I fell outside to the pavement. I woke up to the sound of shattered glass outside, and a large thud just outside my window. I rushed to the window and saw the bruised and still body of Michelle on the driveway. She was motionless, and a pool of blood began to form around her head. I was horrified by what looked like a suicide when I heard her laughing above me. I turned my head upwards to Michelle's shattered bedroom window, and my heart had dropped. The same grinning, insane man from my nightmare was leaning over the shattered window with a glee on his face. I was sure he was looking at me before he had disappeared. He had seemed so familiar. I had called 911 just like before, and once again, Ben pulled up to the house in his police cruiser. He stood frozen while looking at the lifeless cadaver that had once been his younger sister. An ambulance appeared behind him and took his sister away. They didn't switch on the sirens and lights. No point to it, as it was too late. This time, Ben wasn't alone on patrol tonight, and they both grilled me about what had happened. I think they were trying to pin me to her death, as if I had killed her. I wanted to tell them the truth, but what was I going to tell them? That some psychotic old man had thrown her out the window and literally vanished before my eyes? If I had said that, forget jail, I'd go to the psychiatric unit. I told them, I don't know what happened. I just woke up and found her dead outside my window. I think Ben really vouched for me and ruled that his sister's death was an accidental suicide. I was turning back around and past the stairs when my body suddenly froze. My body was reacting to a very sudden, dreadful realization. I was once again looking at the picture of Michelle's grandfather, his flat expression ever staring into me. My heart had suddenly dropped, and my blood seemed to have frozen in my veins. It was him in my dream. It was him grinning from the window before he evaporated like steam. I packed up the next day, quit my job, and dropped out of my school and went back home. I wanted to go anywhere I could just to get away from that house. I never went back there. I want to say that things got better for me after that, but that's not how my story ends. Whatever that thing was had followed me back to my house. Sometimes I'd be asleep or awake, and I'd see that insane, grinning man hovering above me. And then I would be the one screaming. I have like a lump in my throat. I feel like emotional. Why do I feel emotional? That's fucking horrible. Oh no. Up next is a story from the Creepypasta subreddit, and this story is entitled Airplane Friends. Flight 1087 to Atlanta, now boarding. The gate agent called over the intercom. Finally, I thought to myself, I had been waiting for almost 30 minutes, but at least I was in first class and wouldn't have to deal with the cattle call of economy. Now boarding military and persons needing assistance, she called again. Screw this, I said aloud. Rushing to the boarding gate, I nearly knocked over a petite female walking up in the standard military drab. Sorry, darling, first class. I flashed her a quick smile and a wink. She actually looked like she had a nice body under that god-awful uniform. My mind wandered for a split second, thinking what she would look like on her knees. I don't have the time for her today. Besides, I already had a fun time with the overnight desk clerk before checking out of the hotel this morning. Sir, I'm sorry, but we aren't boarding first class yet, the gate agent said with just a hint of irritation. Oh boy, she did not understand how miserable I was about to make her day. She was lucky. I was only 3 minutes into my normal rant before she simply held the scanner up to my boarding pass and let me go. Damn right, I thought to myself as I settled into my first class seat. I quickly connected my phone to the plane's Wi-Fi and typed out a little text to the wife. Hey babe, just got on the plane. I'll land in Atlanta at 4. Love you. See you soon. I've been texting you all morning. I was getting worried about you, she responded. Yeah, I woke up late and was in a big rush. Sorry. Okay, be careful. Call me when you land and I'll pick you up out front. Yup, sounds good. By the way, this plane's Wi-Fi is messed up, so I won't get a chance to text you. To be honest, I didn't even read her response. I loved my wife, don't get me wrong, but damn, was she boring. Also, with me travelling all the time, well, a man has needs. I was waiting for my seatmate to arrive, hoping it was at least a female. I was wound up with some overweight bald guy who wants to talk about his kids as a seatmate. Maybe this time, I would be lucky. I watched as she boarded the plane with nothing but a backpack. I assumed she had a checked bag, as there was no carry-on in her hand. I watched her scan the seat markers as she walked down the aisle, pausing right in front of my row. Please, dear Lord, let her be my seatmate, I prayed in my head. "Excuse me, sir. Do you mind letting me in?" Her voice was angelic when she spoke. "Absolutely," I exclaimed, nearly jumping up out of my seat. God, she was beautiful. Blonde hair, big blue doe eyes, and a smoking hot body. I raised my eyes to the ceiling and folded my hands in a mock prayer as she crawled into the window seat. I quickly pulled out my phone and shot my wife one last text. "Hey, plane just got delayed, so looks like I'll be about an hour or two late. I'll just grab an Uber, so don't miss the kids' pickup from school. Love you." All right, just bought myself 2 hours, I thought to myself. Now I have the whole plane ride to score this one. As the plane left the runway, I started my usual chatting, dropping little flirtations here and there. She never directly flirted back, but she didn't act offended either. She was probably just a little shy, but I could definitely tell she wanted me. As the flight dwindled down, I started pushing a little harder, being more sexual in my comments, gently touching her thigh, but nothing drastic. I didn't want to seem like a creep. Still, she never directly responded, only small hints here and there, letting her hand linger for a little longer than necessary when she pushed my hand off her thigh. Scooting over to the edge of the window, yet still glancing back at me with those eyes. Gosh, she was a hell of a tease. Couldn't wait to land. I finished up using the restroom and opened the door. As I approached my seat, the beautiful young girl was gone. Sitting in her place was the homely-looking military chick from the boarding gate. Excuse me, you're in the wrong seat. That belongs to my friend," I exclaimed, clearly showing my frustration. "You should have a seat, John. There is turbulence coming," the girl spoke calmly. "What the fuck? How do you know my name?" I replied in shock. The words no sooner left my mouth when I heard the familiar beep of the flight attendant's intercom. "All passengers, the captain has turned on the seatbelt sign as we are about to experience a bit of turbulence. Please take your seats and fasten your seatbelts as quickly as possible." I quickly took my seat as the plane began to bounce and shake. Looking to my right, I see a devilish smile creep across the woman's face. Her eyes were a cold iced grey and devoid of emotion. "What the..." I tried to speak, only to be interrupted. "Don't speak, just listen," her voice commanded. "This is the end for you, John. Your years of malicious treatment of others, your infidelity, and your general self-centered lack of caring for those around you has come to an end. You don't even know..." I was interrupted again, this time by her index finger pushed against my lips in a shushing motion. "I said, don't speak." Her voice softened this time. "Your wife reached out to me recently. She's tired of your lies, amongst some other shortcomings. After closer inspection of your life, it seems you'll be a perfect fit for my eternity. The blonde seatmate? She was a final test. Just a confirmation of what we already knew, if you will." I looked around for any help available. Everyone was focused on the plane shaking, and the flight attendants were strapped into their seats, barely within line of sight of my seat row. I tried to defend myself against her baseless accusations, only to find I couldn't open my mouth, no matter how hard I tried. It was as if my lips were glued together. "This is what's about to happen, John. In exactly 2.5 minutes, this plane is going to be struck by lightning, knocking out both primary and auxiliary power. This will force the captain to make an emergency crash landing. Don't worry. Everyone is going to survive. Well, everyone except for you, that is," she said gleefully. My eyes widened in fear as my mind processed her words. My phone suddenly dinged with an incoming text. I tried to reach for it on the tray table, only to find I could no longer move, frozen in some type of paralysis. "Oh, don't worry. I'll get that for you," the woman said, reaching for my phone and holding it in front of my face for me to read. "Hey, babe. By now, you must have met our mutual friend. I wish things had turned out different, but I can't take this anymore. You know the sins you're guilty of, as do I. I've known for years now. The kids and I will be fine. Goodbye, John. I'll see you in 20 years. As I finished the last sentence, the message deleted itself, and my phone flickered to a solid black screen. I felt the plane dip hard when the lightning hit. A horrible crack echoed through the cabin, forcing everyone to cover their ears with their hands. The woman slowly rose from her seat and gently pushed past me. She started down the aisle towards the cockpit. "Who the fuck are you?" I screamed in my head, staring directly at the woman. She paused for a brief moment, turning and looking at me straight in the eye, her once cold eyes now filled with red and orange hues, similar to that you see staring into open flames. Most people refer to me as Lucifer, but you can call me Lucy. And with a wink and a smile, she was gone. I like this one especially, as it's bad things happening to bad men. And this is a cause I can get my whole ass existence behind. Thanks, Lucy. We appreciate your work. The next one I just found by randomizing the pastas, and this one is called Instant Messaging. It all started on the 14th night of March, the night of my parents' 20th wedding anniversary. It was a wonderful sunny day if memory serves, surprisingly warm for before the beginning of spring. The beautiful weather was perfect for the atmosphere of the day. Being married for 20 years is obviously a momentous occasion, so my parents had booked a table at our favourite Italian restaurant. Of course, this was a formal occasion, so I had my best suit on. It was 5:33, and I was just straightening my tie when my phone went off. I'd received a message. That's strange, I thought, that never happens. I checked the message. It was from my mum. It was quite a jumble of numbers and letters, but through the vocabulary stew I could make out one legible phrase. Please help me. It should go without saying that this worried me greatly, so I immediately replied, Are you okay? Just as instantly, I got another text which read, Oops, pocket text. I sighed with all the relief I had and continued to prepare myself. A few minutes later, I received yet another message, this time from my dad. I checked the message and once again it was a massive mixture of letters and numbers, with the phrase, Please help me, concealed within. Creepy though this was, my dad was always a joker, so I presumed he was just joking around, until I was sent another text saying, Oops, pocket text. Now this sparked panic, pure, unmistakable panic. Exactly half a minute passed when I received the exact same two messages from my sister. This could not be coincidental. It just couldn't. In a state of sheer anxiety, I started to run to the restaurant. I made it about a quarter of the way before I was stopped by a police officer. Main road's closed, he said. Huge car crash. This was the exact moment I had realised just what had happened. I demanded to see the wreckage, a request which I was surprised was allowed. When I got there, it wasn't the remnants of the car that caught my eye, nor the flames billowing from the destroyed vehicle. No, I was horrified to see the lifeless corpses of my mother, father, and sister. I asked for the estimated time of their deaths. All three of them were killed instantly by the collision, at 5:32, a minute before the very first text. I got all chilly down my back, Jesus. Okay, one more. And I found this on the Scary Stories subreddit as well, and this is called Audio from a Mysterious 911 Call. 911, what is your emergency? There's a woman in my house. Can you describe what she looks like? She's been trying to murder me ever since I did the same thing to her. Huh? Are you sure you're not on any drugs of any sort? Let me explain. Okay, sir. A few months ago, my wife cheated on me with another man, and I was so heartbroken that I couldn't feel happiness anymore. So I murdered her, taking all of my rage from her cheating on me out on her. After I buried her, and I looked down on the coffin and saw what I did to her, I felt so guilty that I just broke down in tears. She used to be the love of my life. How did it come to this? Okay, sir, take a deep breath. The first time she tried to kill me was a week after I murdered her. It was raining hard, and I looked down at my shaking hands, and there was blood on them. When I blinked, the blood was gone. I was just so guilty that my guilt was making me hallucinate her blood on my hands. At about 3 a.m., there was a noise from across the hall. So I walked down the hallway, and there she was, holding a knife in her hands. She screeched all of her agony out and ran towards me with the knife. She tackled me to the ground, and pain shot through my body. But when I opened my eyes, she was gone. Where is your address? And now she's trying to kill me a second time. Where is your address? 136 Benjamin Road, Oakland, California. And she's walking around my house trying to find me. This time, I was having dinner when suddenly she was sitting across from me. She launched herself across the table, trying to kill me, but I disabled her for a short time and ran into my closet. Now I'm hiding from her. What's going on? She locked my door. You need to stay quiet. It's too late. She knows where I am now. Good. Sir? Sir? The police found his body in his closet, with a gun in his hand. His death was ruled as a suicide by gunshot. His note simply said, "I'm sorry." Whoop! Whoop whoop whoop. So this was fun. What was a really good idea was to do all the research for all these pastas and pre-read them before filming this, right before going to bed at like 4 or 5 in the morning. So that's great. Thank you so much for watching. I love doing fun videos like this, where we all just get a little spooky and a little scared together. Watch this before you go sleep, if you definitely want to have sleep paralysis, because I definitely did. I'll be doing another one of these, I'm sure, but I would actually like to have some submissions from you guys. I did receive consent to use all of these stories by their authors, but it would be amazing if I could have some viewer involvement. In fact, I would suggest, if you do have any submissions, if you are Discord inclined, I have a Discord server with a specific channel for any submissions regarding scary stories, creative writing pieces that I can narrate on the channel. Failing that, shoot me a DM on Instagram. Thanks for watching, and make sure you comment a plate of pasta emoji down in the comments, because you know, creepypasta. Make sure you like the video if you made it this far. But that's it from me today, kids, and I'll be back.